Do you recognize this guy? You should.
In the last episode of Top Shit Photography...
Hey, good morning. Welcome back. This is the third video of the saga of testing developers. As you remember, in the last episodes, I photographed a roll of film. I cut it, and one piece of roll I developed with Rodinal, one piece I developed with FX-1, then with Kodak D-76, and the last piece of roll I developed with Pyrocat HD. But before reviewing the results of my research, I have to confess one thing. I really hate the talking head kind of format of vlogs. But today is going to be exactly that. I'm doing this for way too long, and I totally underestimated the amount of work it demands. But, you know, I did it. I've done it. Here it is. Today, no fancy B-roll, okay?
Standing on the sidelines, watching life go by. But now I hear something that sounds like a love song from the birds.
The inspiration for this vlog and this experiment comes from the film developing cookbook by Stephen G. Anchel and Bill Troop. And everything what is written there corresponds with my findings. But there are two big gaps I wanted to fill up from this book and in the comparison to my work. First, you know, when in the cookbook is saying that FX developer is much sharper than Kodak D-76, that's absolutely true. But what does that mean? You know, how much? Is it worth? Is it like a big difference or is it like a small difference? And the second gap is the Kodak engineers were analyzing the film, and the latitude of the dynamic range of a film is between 6 and 9 f-stops, whereas the paper has between 3 and 4 f-stops. You know, so when we are printing a negative, we have to translate this amount of information into the smaller scale. I mean, yeah, on the paper basically. So the question is, which negative is more suitable for my work? Which one I enjoy the most printing? Okay. So what do we have here? The first one is D-76, the second one is FX-1, the third one is Pyrocat, and the last one is Rodinal. Pyrocat has beautiful staining effect of a little bit yellowish. Before seeing the prints, I want to confess one thing. Actually, I made one big mistake that I really don't like, but it happened. What I've done is actually I cut the paper. This is also one cheap trick that I use. I order bigger sheets of paper and then I cut them. And per piece, then, you know, I can do a big prints or small prints, but small prints are costing less. Anyway, cheap trick. So anyway, I was starting to print on this paper, which is really good, multi-grade RC Pearl 44M. And unfortunately I run out. And then I said, oh, I have another box, and I started with this one. It looks the same, but it's not the same. This is satin. And while I was developing, it looks the same. You know, like it looks the same surface. I said, great, fantastic. But when it dried, let me show you.
The left paper is a satin surface and the right side is a pearl surface. Both of them are between glossy and matte, but the pearl is much more glossy than the satin one.
My logic of printing was actually that the whites should be just a little bit less than a pure paper. And then the next shade, all these lines has to be visible. At the same time, also the details in black has to be visible. Also here inside. Yeah, so this was my standard. So this is the 19 by 28.5 centimeters. So, and then I made a blow up from this, which is, I would be printing 45 by 68 centimeters. So from this piece, I blew it up. I've been using this Durst 138S enlarger, and I used this lens. Yes, you guessed correctly. It's 50mm lens. In the other vlogs, I was using 210 and 150. Now I was using 50, so that's why you see it's like bent in, so I could focus. Anyway, I've used condensers. On the top one is 130, and on the bottom one is 85. Anyway, to make a long story short, condensers are condensing the light, are directing the light on the film. And if you have a smaller film, you need and a smaller focal length of your lens. Then you need different condensers. Let me show you the big one. This is for 5 by 7 inch films. And this is the small one. See? For developer, I used Ilford multigrade, but I'm using some cheap trick that you might enjoy. You know, I really don't like fresh developer. It's too harsh. But what I do, I usually take old exhausted developer, like multigrade Ilford, and then I throw in some fresh developer. How much? Nobody knows. You know, I just see how it's developing. If the blacks are weak, then I add a little bit more of this. And when I say blacks are weak, I don't mean underexposed, okay? I mean, you don't have to believe me. Just do a test. Oh, and then is very important component. As it says in the manuals, is use fresh developer, and then you dilute it 1+9 and develop this for 1 minute. And if it's too dark, you cut the exposure. Well, I do it differently. Because I'm using this slow exhausted developer on steroids. I'm developing for these prints that we're developing for around 3 to 4 minutes. Yeah, sure, after 1 minute the picture was developed. But because I was using exhausted developer on steroids, I let it work for another 2 minutes, so between 3 and 4 minutes. And this, in 1 minute, the blacks developed fully, or almost fully. And then in the next 2 or 3 minutes, the blacks got like 20% deeper. But the highlights were really slowly settling down, and to get this, the best tonality that I prefer. That's a top shit cheap trick. Okay, hi there. Ciao. Okay, now the most important part of this saga of vlogs, to review the prints from close, but we will review them on computer to get like absolutely best sharpness. Okay, let me just say one thing. We are reviewing prints. Basically, the film negatives were manipulated by my judgment, my printing skills. Here we have 4 prints. They all look great, if I'm honest. They all look good. But what I'm interested in this stage is to see the blow-ups. So I want to see, let's say, the youngest the youngest developer, which is Pyrocat HD versus Rodinal. Comparison. Let's see. So as you see in Rodinal, you can see a star in this shadow. With Pyrocat, you can hardly see a star. In highlights, this line is really nicely defined. I'm surprised that this grain is so well articulated with Pyrocat. I thought that Rodinal would be sharper. And tonality-wise, I think in blacks, I would vote that Rodinal is better. In highlights, well, Pyrocat is much better. It's also sharper, you know. That's interesting, because Rodinal is known to be a sharp developer. Okay. Let's see the other two, FX-1 versus D-76. D-76 undiluted is very soft. It's very soft, but the tonality is amazing. And FX-1 is one of the sharpest developers out there. So that's why you see the difference, you know, like if we look at this whites, you know, like the D-76 looks like it would be unsharp, but it is sharp. But as you see, the tonality on the right, D-76 is much better, much greater. FX-1 would look like a graphic art, whereas on the other developer would draw it very gently. You know, if you would do a portrait, you know, you don't want to have all the wrinkles so sharp, you know, so you would use D-76 undiluted. Okay, let's compare the old guys, Rodinal versus D-76. D-76 is on the left side, Rodinal is on the right side. As you can see, Rodinal is much sharper in comparison to D-76. You see the highlight here, the line is, well, tonality-wise, look at that, you know, in tonality-wise, you know, in blacks, you can actually, with D-76, you can actually count the branches. With Rodinal, you cannot. Also, but in highlights, you know, yeah, it's the same thing. Rodinal is much sharper, and D-76 is much better in tonality. Let's compare Pyrocat versus FX-1, the young guy versus the young guy. Okay, these are both, so on the right side we have FX-1, very sharp developer. On the left side we have a Pyrocat. As you see, the Pyrocat on the left has much smaller grain, whereas FX-1 has much sharper. But you know, Pyrocat in blacks only, I mean, the star is hardly visible, whereas in FX-1 the star is still visible. So in blacks it's the same thing, although the Pyrocat is not doing well in comparison to FX-1, at least that's my opinion. And Pyrocat in highlights here, it's much better than FX-1. So Pyrocat has a smaller grain, has a better tonality in highlights, but you know, surprisingly in blacks is actually doesn't have that kind of power and strength. Let me find some other. You see, FX-1 on the right has a better drawing in black. Let's wrap it up. Recording third time this final summation, and just like, ugh. Welcome back. Okay, final summation is like this. We tested 4 developers. If you're starting in photography and you're a hobby photographer here and there, you know, I would suggest to start with Rodinal. It's great. It was invented, or it was put into the market in 1891 maybe, or 94. So basically it's the oldest photographical product still on the market. You can buy it today, of course, modified. But it's Rodinal, basically. So it has amazing shelf life. It's one-shot developer, which means you mix the amount that you need. 200 milliliters, you mix 200 milliliters. You don't have to mix a whole liter or 5 liters. What else? It has this option of lazy development, which means stand developing. You know, like you can put your rolls inside, you put a developer in, you leave it for half an hour, you clip it, you turn it around one time, and you leave it for another half an hour, and it's done. Inside this tank, it could be 100 ISO, 50 ISO, 200 ISO, whatever. If it's 18 degrees Celsius or 21, doesn't really matter. So, or 22, doesn't really matter. So it's very forgiving developer, very kind to use. It's not that poisonous, or I don't think it's poisonous actually. I never heard about. It's definitely lower than all the rest. One more thing, if you want to shoot 400 ISO films, I wouldn't choose Rodinal because it's not very good with the high speed films, and especially I would not choose this one if you want to push it. If you want to shoot in 400, if you want to shoot 100 ISO film and then push it to 400, that's not your developer. If you want to do this, then this is your developer. This is the second oldest developer out of those four. This old baby was the answer to the prayer of cinematography industry, because it was the first developer that maintained the sharpness. It was a fine grain developer. What else? It has a good shelf life, and so on and so on. It's really excellent developer. You can push. All the films will develop well in this developer. Why? Because it's not the best developer, but because it's that kind of so popular, every filmmaker will make a film that will develop well in this developer. So if you want to get a little bit more ambitious, then go with ID11, Ilford ID11 or Kodak D-76, and that will allow you to push film, to pull film. That will allow you to make it a solvent, very soft, long tonality developer, meaning undiluted, or you can have it a very sharp developer, like diluted. Like my favorite way is diluted 1+3. I made a video, you can check it out, and you will understand why. A third developer that I want to talk about is a Pyrocat HD. I heard a lot of amazing stuff about this developer, but that doesn't correspond with my experience. Not with the one that we seen or with the others. Like I like in one tank I put like FOMA and FP4 and other, and I developed all together. And Ilford FP4 was expired, and it got so much streaks. It's just amazing. And but the same role also the FOMA was developing, totally fine. But this is Pyrocat is very unforgiving developer. So it's the best developer for highlights. If you shoot something white on white, meaning snowy landscape or white, blue, beautiful clouds, yeah, might not be very good developer. In my research, I saw that the definition in blacks, in the shadows, is really poor of this developer. So I have to test that too. I'm not sure. This is my first impression. So we will see. I'm not impressed with this developer, but that said, that's my first impression. I never had any experience before. So more work on this one. FX-1 actually really surprised me. Yes, when we look at the enlargements, the blow-ups, the corn was really super sharp, super sharp, and but it looked like, of course, it comes on the expense of tonality. But that's the trick, now that's the trick. If you would be here and you would take this print in your hand, you will evaluate it with your own eyes. But as far as I see it, when I look at this print, because of the sharpness that is produced by FX-1, I have a feeling I'm looking at the medium format film. I mean, print made of medium format film. It's really sharp, it's really crisp, and it's very surprising to other, you know, when you compare it to other prints, it's special. So I like it a lot, actually. I like it a lot. You know, that's why I like ID11 1+3, because in 1+3 dilution it's really sharp developer, and this one is even sharper, and it doesn't lose so much tonality as I would thought. So, you know, I might make another video in a year time when I will have more experience with these two developers. If you have experience with these developers, please leave a comment. If you have tested together with others, you know, please share with us. You know, that will be very interesting. So, and also you viewers, check the comments. I know I'm not I'm not here as somebody authority. I am actually here as a student, you know, reading the cookbook, and then I'm studying. And yes, of course, I made like I developed thousands of films with ID11 or D-76, but not so much with other developers. And it might be that FX-1 will be my new favorite developer. Maybe not. Who knows? Anyway, leave a comment, press like. If you want us to subscribe to this channel, be welcome. If you want to support this channel, you can buy my book. I have 17 more copies, and then I might run a reprint. I might not. You can be my patron with monthly donations, and for that I will send you a print or something like, or you know, a reward. Or if you don't want to have none of that, you know, you can just, but you would still like to buy me a drink. Let me share with you that I don't drink coffee, and I don't drink alcohol, and I don't eat meat, but I am crazy for tea, for green tea. So you can send me a tea, or you can send me a donation on paypal.me/BortPeterlin. But either way,